Sweet.
Awesome. So today we are going to talk about how to build enterprise connectors and share some of the lessons that we have learned along the way. Before we jump in, some quick introductions on our side. My name is Kevin. I am on the go-to-market team here at Unstructured. Think of me as the Ryan Seacrest of the webinar series. I am joined by a senior software engineer in Potter who has done a tremendous amount of work building out our connectors. So thanks for being here, man.
Yeah, I'm super excited.
Awesome. Do you want to skip to the agenda slide?
Yeah.
So, oh, are you sliding on your side, Potter? It's stuck.
Oh, yeah, it should be on the agenda. Who is unstructured? Yeah, no, it's
Oh,
not skipping.
I still see the title slide, so maybe, oh, there we go. There's just a
That's
bit of a delay. Cool. So the agenda for today, a little background on unstructured. We'll dive into our connector architecture, how we think about source and destination connectors, and then Potter is kind enough to do a quick demo for y'all. Next slide, Potter. Some quick housekeeping items on our side. Make sure that chat goes in the chat box. And then if you do have questions you want us to get to, there is a separate tab on the bottom for Q&A. We will send out a recording of the webinar later today with some resources for getting started. Um, and then if you do have any questions or you want to talk with an AI expert, feel free to go to our website, book a call. We are always happy to connect.
excuse me, an AI expert.
Well, AI
Oh,
expert, we have solutions architects, people who
gotcha.
live in this world.
Cool.
Awesome. Potter, are you going to the next slide? I still see agenda.
Oh, yeah, it's not working. It's not working. Let me try to
Oh,
read.
oh, now I got it. So
Yeah,
maybe
it
so
stalls out for some reason.
try just clicking manually.
Okay.
Yep, that's working.
Okay.
Cool. You want to go one more?
Yep.
All right, a little bit of background on Unstructured. We started 3 years ago as an open source product, basically looking to answer the question, do companies struggle to take unstructured data from wherever it lives, be it S3, Azure Blob, and convert it into a structured object? You flash forward to today, and it's been a pretty wild ride. We have some amazing customers, over 50 million downloads of our open source product, and some really incredible backers who are helping us solve this problem at scale. And so, without further ado, Potter, let's talk about connectors.
Oh, yeah. Let's do it. Okay. All right. So, what do we mean by connectors? Well, think of connectors as the plumbing. So, data lives in one place, it needs to get somewhere else, and connectors make that happen. So, let's say the simplest example would be a customer has PDFs in an S3 bucket. The source connector authenticates, lists files, pulls the files down. Those files go through the partitioner. That's where the magic, unstructured magic happens. Then the destination connector writes the structured output back to S3. Same service on both ends, but completely different jobs. And if any of it breaks, the whole pipeline stops. So we treat connectors with the same passion as we treat our core product. So why do we build connectors? Well, we don't get a choice where the customers keep their data. So one company may have everything in S3, another is spread across SharePoint, Salesforce, a Postgres database from 2014. Maybe the next one is air-gapped with no internet connection. The whole point is to meet the customers where their data lives. Every connector we add opens up a new set of customers who couldn't use the platform before. Connectors aren't the product, but without them, the product can't reach anyone. So we support a bunch of connectors. Sources on the left like S3, SharePoint, Google Drive, Salesforce. And destinations on the right like Pinecone, Weaviate, Elasticsearch, Postgres, Databricks. Every icon is a connector our team builds and maintains, each with its own authentication scheme, API quirks, rate limits. Every connector we add makes the platform more valuable, but it also adds to the surface area that we have to maintain. So the goal is not to have the most connectors, it's to have the right ones working reliably every time. Now, connectors fall into natural categories, and that's actually more useful than it might seem. So object storage like S3, Azure Blob, GCS, they all behave similarly, list, download, upload, whole files. Once you've built one, the next one is a lot of pattern matching. Then there's vector databases like Pinecone, Weaviate, AstraDB. They share a common shape around schemas and embeddings. You have SQL databases that mostly speak the same language, but their data types can often differ. And SaaS platforms like Salesforce, GitHub, Zendesk, those are the wild cards. Salesforce actually doesn't even have a concept of a document, so we construct XML files to make it work with our unstructured pipeline. So categories matter for two reasons. One, when we build a new connector, the category actually tells us a lot about which patterns to start from, which issues we're going to probably run into, things we have to solve before we create the connector. And two, they provide the structural predictability that AI needs to build new connectors, abstracting away the unknowns of a new source or destination. So this is pretty standard ETL, extract, transform, load. It's a good way to think about our platform. We've got your extract or source connectors on the left, the transform in the middle, that's all the unstructured magic, and the load or destination connectors on the right. So if we look at the source connector a little closer, the source connector has two jobs. Find the data and get it into a format that the partitioner can work with. The indexer is sort of the scout. It scans the source, lists all the items, lists all the files, and builds a manifest with file paths, version info, metadata, recursive folders. It doesn't actually download anything. It just answers the question, what's out there? The downloader then takes that manifest and goes and gets the files. It fans out for downloads, so we're not bottlenecked on a single thread. It also does file conversion if needed. We split them up for a reason. If the indexer fails, we can't see the data. If the downloader fails, we can see it, but we can't reach it. And obviously, we like the fan out. Let me pause for thirst identification.
Gotta stay hydrated, Potter,
That's right.
especially with all that sun you're getting in Portland.
Totally. All right. And this is a closer look at the destination side. Destination connectors take the pipeline's output and upload in a format that's actually useful for the customer. Again, we use two different components. The stager handles the transformation. Every destination expects something different. Pinecone wants vectors in a specific shape. SQL wants its own schemas. S3 just gets the JSON files. Now, the stager reshapes our universal unstructured output into exactly what the uploader needs. The uploader then takes that stage data and writes it. Batching, rate limits, payload constraints, retry logic, that's all handled here. If a batch fails, the uploader will retry it without restaging everything. So that's some of the reasons we set it up this way. Now let's talk about the challenges. With authentication alone, we've got OAuth, API keys, IAM roles, mutual TLS, SAML, there's no standard. And if the auth is wrong, nothing else works. Oftentimes, this is actually the hardest part to build and test. APIs break and deprecate. A vendor ships a breaking change on a Friday, and a connector that's been fine for years starts failing. Edge cases multiply at scale. 100 files works perfectly. 100,000 files hits pagination limits, memory ceilings, socket exhaustion, poor sockets. And then there's the network layer, firewalls, proxies, private link, air-gapped environments, where the whole deployment model changes. These aren't problems that we solve once, they're problems we manage continuously. So how do we know that the connectors are actually working? We don't mock things and hope for the best. I mean, we also mock things, but we actually run end-to-end tests against live services multiple times a day. Real S3 buckets, real Pinecone indexes, real Postgres databases. If the tests pass, it works because it just did the real pipeline. An options matrix covers the settings that customers actually use, not just the happy path. And then there's organizing the credentials for these tests. Dozens of services are organized, rotated, and isolated. Credential management breaks every test breaks. Each test validates the full round trip: authentication, transfer, formatting, and item potency. In other words, we run the same test twice and verify that the destination looks identical both times. We actually even download the resulting uploads and check them against a source of truth. If it doesn't pass, it doesn't make the release. So testing catches a lot, but production always finds new ways to surprise you. So we instrument everything. Every workflow run produces structured logs and traces, a full timeline of what happened in the job and where it broke. When something fails, we don't ask the customer to reproduce it. We already have the data. We alert on failure rates and latency spikes, but also on silent data loss, as if a connector that completes successfully but writes empty records. That's something we'd like to avoid. Error messages point to the real problems: expired tokens, unreachable hosts, payload too large. If it's a customer error, usually that gets bubbled up in the UI so that the customer can often fix it themselves. Transient failures get retried with a backoff. Permanent failures fast fail almost immediately. And every production bug becomes a new test case, so it mostly never surprises us again. I'll let you stew on that.
All right. Keeping everyone on the edge of their seat, Potter.
I know it. I know it. All right. This is the fun stuff. The welcome everybody. The future is now. So we're in the middle of building an isolated testing platform purpose-built for connectors. And it doubles as a load testing harness plugged directly into CI, continuous integration. So before a connector ships, we can test it in this new isolated testing platform. We know it works, and we know it holds up under pressure. On the development side, we're leaning into AI that understands our connector categories. It generates real, useful scaffolding based on the established patterns. This shrinks the new connector lifecycle from weeks to days. At least that's the goal. And on the front end, we're moving to a fully configuration-driven rendering. So you define the connector settings in the config, and the UI actually builds itself or it renders itself. No front-end tickets, no handoff, no waiting. This part alone has been a real game changer. So this is just some random things we've discovered building and maintaining connectors. And they're kind of fun to think about, especially if you're a connector nerd like myself. Kevin, are you a connector nerd?
I don't know if I would go that far,
Yeah.
but I respect the importance that they bring to our product.
You're
So,
a huge fan.
yeah, big fan of everything that they do and support within unstructured.
Okay, great. That's important. So in row and column like destinations, we do a delete and upload instead of an upsert. An upsert would be a fancy name for overriding based on a key or an ID. So instead of an upsert, we delete all existing records for a document and then re-upload from scratch. Seems like a lot of work, but the reason is due to orphaned elements. If someone, say, deletes a paragraph in a document and it gets repartitioned, an upsert would leave those old elements in the destination. Delete and re-upload guarantees a destination's document accurately represents the current original. We call those orphaned elements. Um, NDJSON, this one's kind of cool. So we switched in the middle of the pipeline, we switched to NDJSON instead of JSON. And NDJSON is essentially JSON lines, where every entry in kind of the list is its own line. So we pass everything in the pipeline around as NDJSON now. NDJSON lets us stream elements one at a time as single lines in the file so we can parallelize processing across the whole pipeline.
I hate saying that
JSON,
word.
what's that?
I hate saying parallelize.
I
I
tried
trip
to,
up 9 times out of 10.
yeah, I try to avoid it as much as possible. Um, JSON, JSON requires loading the entire JSON document at once for it to get like at one of the elements. But NDJSON allows you to pull off just a line if you want. So for a pipeline moving millions of elements, that difference matters enormously. Pinecone, like many vector databases, enforces a strict record size limit. I mean, that's because it's really focused on the vector piece of it, and it's optimizing for that. It doesn't necessarily focus on all the metadata around that. So, sounds like a destination problem, but it actually forces chunking decisions upstream. So if your chunks are too big, the upload, it will get truncated or potentially fail. So we have to account for this. Salesforce is a fun one. Like I said before, it doesn't have the concept of a document. So we actually construct XML documents to represent the information that you're trying to download. Go XML. On the popularity side, Postgres with PG Vector has become everyone's favorite vector destination. PG Vector is just an open source extension to allow efficient vector storage and vector searches. PDFs dominate what runs through unstructured. But interesting, LLMs actually thrive on HTML, JSON, and Markdown. And that's actually really why unstructured was created in the first place, to convert PDFs into meaningful JSON. And the last point is our guiding philosophy. Connectors should feel seamless and invisible. When they're working well, nobody thinks about them. Our users get to enjoy all that magic in the middle, the partitioning, the extraction, the named entity recognition, the enrichments, all that cool stuff. What do you think about that, Kevin?
I love it. It is
Yeah,
exciting. Yeah, it is funny that connectors are kind of the forgotten piece in
yeah,
document processing, but without it, none of it works.
yeah,
So thank you for all the work that you do maintaining and building our connectors. That's huge.
yeah. Yeah, what do you think about all the cool, what, am I still there? What do you think
Yeah,
about all that cool stuff that happens in the middle? Partitioning,
that's
chunking, embedding.
I love it.
Yeah.
I will say it's always like a fun problem to solve with clients to be like, what is the right chunking strategy?
Mhm.
And then like that opens up a can of worms with what's the right embedding model to use. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh, you have a French document or French PDF. The
Huh.
embedding model you use there is going to look very different than a, Germanic
Huh.
um, embedding model. So,
Nice. Cool. Let me move to the demo. Should we
oh,
go
somebody
for it?
has a raised hand. If you have a question, KLP. Oh, I don't know who's raising their hand. If feel free to ask the question if you do have one in the Q&A tab, and then we'll get to that at the end of the call. I know we're coming up on time, and so I want to give Potter a little bit to do
Oh,
his demo.
gotcha. Oh, yeah. Okay, let me get to the demo. Let's see. Can you see the unstructured
We
platform?
got you.
Sweet. Okay, so I'm just going to do a quick demo of maybe the simplest of workflows, like I had mentioned way earlier. So we have your connectors. All right. So we have a source connector. So if you wanted to make a new connector, you would just come to connectors, hit new, and then this might look familiar. S3, um, that, continue. So you would fill out this form and it actually do, at the end of this, it would do a pre-check where it would actually test to make sure that your connector can connect to that S3 bucket. And then we have something like a destination connector, S3 destination, very simple. And then I'll show you a quick workflow using that. So we can build a new workflow. We can use that source. We can use the destination. And then we can choose our partitioner. I love high res. I'm biased, of course. We can enrich with a chunker. Oh wait, I was going to show you the simplest one, but all these things are so cool. So I'm going to spend a moment. We can choose our different embedders like Kevin was talking about. And that is an example of setting up connectors in a workflow. All right, let's bust back to the last slide in this part. So every connector we add makes the platform more valuable, but as you know, it adds much more to maintain. To recap, should we skip the recap, Kevin?
Yeah, we should probably just jump into Q&A. We got 4 minutes left.
Okay,
And I saw
let's
that
do it.
there was one question that was about kind of future Gen AI and how it's going to lead to better connector development. I
Gotcha.
think this feeds into one of the pre-submitted questions around how long does it actually take to build a new connector?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you want to start there,
Yeah.
Potter?
What's that?
Do you want to start with that question?
Yeah, that sounds great. So AI that's a super fun question because like I had mentioned before, we're building this like testing suite. It's like a testing development suite that helps you build your connectors. And I've kind of built the first connectors in that, but now we have people that are like using that as an example and using the different categories, and they're using AI to build connectors. And some of them have built connectors in a day. Takes a little bit longer to test them and put them into production, but the timeline is shrinking rapidly. Still,
Yeah,
there's still some important pieces around that that don't get done automatically, but that's kind of really exciting part.
awesome. Yeah, I think I saw one of our team members built a connector in 6 hours and had it pushed into staging, which was pretty cool to
Really?
see.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I tested it. It worked great.
Awesome. Here's a question. How do we take care of permission security of the documents in RAG architectures while respecting the source side ACLs? This is a known problem with RAG, and I want to be transparent, it's not solved today. The way we handle this at Unstructured is some of our connectors expose permissions in the metadata. If they are exposed, we will pass that through to the destination. So you don't have people getting access to information that they shouldn't have access to. If the source connector does not expose permissions, then we are unable to preserve it and pass it through. We're working with a lot of vendors in this space to white label a solution in, and we're trying to settle on the right one. But that's a great question. All right, we got 2 minutes left. Um, Potter, did you answer this? How do you handle front end versus back end when building connectors?
Yeah, that's so we're kind of building this new plugin architecture, this new connector architecture that we call plugin connectors. And I had mentioned it, but we actually are now able to embed the front end presentation information in the connector itself. So in the front end, it's built so that it automatically renders all the fields. You can you can set up validations and all that thing in the connector itself, so there isn't a separate code for the front end.
Awesome. All right, we have one last rapid fire question. for you, Potter. How does this architecture hold up when you're dealing with really large repos like SharePoint with millions of documents?
Yeah, good question. So as you had seen in the architecture of a source connector, it will do an indexing, so essentially a list, and it'll get all the files that are available. So that is, a listing is actually relatively quick.
Hmm.
Uh, then it'll take that list and then it'll fan out with downloaders, and those downloaders will then grab all those files.
Awesome. Okay. I just want to say thank you to everyone for joining and the amazing questions that we had throughout the webinar. We do not have another one on the books. We're working to figure out what is the best topic, but feel free to go to our events tab. We have lots of amazing content, and we will notify you all when we have another webinar hitting the books. So have a great rest of your Wednesday, and we'll see you soon.